conversation goes on. And yes, but yes, it's great to have you out here on our platform, Sonica, and definitely we look forward to this exciting session.
Totally. Likewise.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for joining in today. Um, Without taking much time, we'll begin with our today's session. A very warm welcome to all our participants. I hope you and your family are all safe and sound. June is LGBTQ Pride Month all around the globe. It takes no compromise to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect individuals. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. It takes no survey to remove repressions. A diverse mix of voices leads to better discussion, decisions, and outcomes for everyone. Let's hear it from our guest today on diversity and inclusion on this month of Pride. HR Association of India welcomes you all to Dialogue Masterclass series on the diversity and inclusion, where we have Ms. Sonica, who will be talking majorly on the LGBTQ inclusion. Request all our participants to kindly follow the webinar guidelines mentioned in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all the participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our master for today, Ms. Sonica Aron, founder and managing partner, Marching Sheep. Ms. Sonica is among the most awarded HR advisory firms globally and has specialized into strategic HR advisory, diversity and inclusion interventions, employee health and wellness, along with capability building. She has been recognized by Forbes twice as the leading HR consultant and among the top 10 women entrepreneurs recognized by Fortune and Business Today for the path-breaking work in the area of DEI, and Marching Sheep has been nominated by UN Women for WEP Leadership Awards for their work during the pandemic towards gender equality, emotional well-being, and empowerment. She has worked with companies like PepsiCo, Vodafone, Roche Diagnostics, and ICI Paints in leadership roles before finding her own HR consulting firm. A mother of two, she decided to set up Marching Sheep in 2013 with a vision of making a difference in people's lives, career, and driving respect and equality for all. As a human resource and D&I specialist with an experience of more than 20 years, both in industry and consulting, she has designed one of the most evolved diversity and inclusion frameworks in India with deep understanding of real issues faced by women, individuals from LGBTQ community, and people with disability. Do feel free to follow her on LinkedIn. Details for the same are shared in the chat window. Without taking much time, I now welcome Ms. Sonica. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Peter. And it's a pleasure to be back on this platform. It feels very nice that there is a platform like this where we can all share our learnings and insights. I did not know much about LGBTQIA till about 3 years back. And I have also learned along the way. So I'm here to share whatever I have learned. And I hope you find value in today's session. I have been working in the space of DEI for a long time, and I feel extremely passionate about it. Not only because I'm a woman, I have been an HR professional. And I believe that when people of different backgrounds, of different ages, different genders, they come together and they work together, respect each other, and everybody is able to get their authentic self to the table, there is a very different kind of harmony, different kind of energy, positivity that gets created, and the team performance can go to a very different level. I have seen that in different organizations where managers with their behaviors have been able to unleash the power of diversity through their inclusive behaviors. I have also seen the impact where the negative impact where people have had to curb their authenticity because the organization culture or the managerial behaviors have forced people into a shell. So I feel extremely passionately about uh, driving inclusion and letting people thrive as they are. Today, I'm going to talk about LGBTQIA inclusion, not because it is the Pride Month, but because inclusion is a journey and it should continue beyond the Pride Month. Uh, a lot of companies do a lot of sessions during the month of June. They will change their logo, they will put the pride flag, and do a lot during the month of June. But that was the story even with inclusion of women. International Women's Day would come in March, and if people would do uh, uh, lunches on 8th of March, and they would do uh, giveaways and gifts for women, but that did not do anything. I mean, how does that improve working conditions? How does that improve equity? How does that make sure that women reach leadership levels? That does not do anything. What is required for inclusion is that we keep working through the year, and that requires that we understand what is it that people from the community need for organizations to be inclusive, their team members to be inclusive, and each of us as individuals to be inclusive. There is a difference in being tolerant and accepting. There is a difference in saying, oh, as an organization, we are willing to hire, but where is the talent pool? And there is a difference in saying that, oh, there is an NGO which is giving talent or providing people. There are companies like Periphery, there is the Tweet Foundation, there is Vividta, and they have people from the LGBTQ community. Can we tie up with them and say, send us some resumes? I am not saying that hire on compassionate grounds, but I'm saying hire on merit, but at least call for resumes. So there is a huge difference between tolerance and acceptance. And this activity needs to go on year round, not only in the month of June. And that is why I'm going to talk about this today. The second thing that I want to talk about is we have been working on inclusion of women in the workforce for decades. But have we reached the desired outcome? We haven't. Is inclusion of LGBTQI community going to take the same time? We have to do better. We have to be better. We must have learned something from our journey in the inclusion of participation of women in the workforce. Can we apply some of those learnings? Can we speed up our journey towards inclusion of LGBTQ community? And that is why I'm going to speak about this today, because the community already has suffered enough. We cannot prolong it anymore. So that is why I'm going to speak about it today. So I'm going to start with showing you a video, and then we are going to move forward.
बदलाव के पहिए सिर्फ पन्नों पर नहीं, रास्तों पर भी चलने चाहिए ना।
So what did we see here? And you can put your comments in the chat box. Anyone? Any insights from this video? You know, this is what happens. This lady, yes, support, help. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, Ayushi. A lady was expecting help. Wonderful, Rashi. The bias of giving away money, need for mindset change, Preeti, beautiful. You know, did you notice a little thing? That she was trying to board a bus. From the front, women were boarding the bus, and from the back, men were boarding the bus. She's a transgender. She has transitioned from being a man to a woman. Women told her to board the bus from the back. Men were telling her to board the bus from the front. A similar incident happened in a workplace. A man had transitioned to being a woman. After he transitioned to being a woman, the women in the organization raised a concern. They said, how can he now use the women's washroom? He used to be a man. The organization, HR, the DEI consultant that they were working with, counselors, everybody tried to reason with the women. They said that this person has gone through a medical transition. This person is now a woman. This person is now the gender expression, the gender identity is that of a woman. But the women did not accept. Eventually, that person had to leave the organization. And it was not a small organization. It was an extremely renowned MNC with educated women from Premier B schools studying there, working there. All millennials. But they did not accept. The mindset that if a transgender is approaching a cab or a car, the transgender would be, or a trans woman would be approaching for begging. She was not approaching for begging. She wanted to hire the cab to go to office. When the trans woman approached the bus stand, did you notice how the mother tried to not let her sit next to her child? Is being the trans woman infectious? What is the message that the mother is giving to the child? She is transferring her transphobia to her child, and the child will grow up to be transphobic. And that is how, as a society, we perpetuate exclusion. I was speaking with Abhina Aher. You might have heard of her name. She is a trans woman, a very celebrated transgender activist. She has been working in this field for the last 26 years. She has been, her story has been covered by NDTV and a lot of other platforms. If you Google her name, you'll find it. She's running Tweet Foundation today, where she's running shelters all across the country, which are providing healthcare, employment, education to people from the community. And a lot of organizations are hiring people through Tweet Foundation. And she said that if you if you do your research and read about the history of the trans community, in ancient India, the transgender community was celebrated. It was held in very high regard. They were so few, they were called, in our scriptures, it was written Nar, Nari or Kinnara. Kinnara were people who were in between. And they were celebrated, they were called home, they were given food, they were made to sit with the family members. They were called for blessings. And then when the Mughals came, they caught the transgender community with them, who were called Hijras. So the Kinnara and the Hijra community, they mixed. And they mixed together, they got together, and the tradition continued. Even in the Mughal Empire, the Hijra community was a very important part of the courts of their harems. It was only when the British came, they made a rule in 1867 that criminalized homosexuality and being a transgender. The Britishers left, but we continued with that law. Today in UK, being a homosexual or transgender is not criminal. Today in UK, they have the right to get married and adopt children. But in India, even though in 2018, Section 377 was read down, which decriminalized consensual same-sex activity, same-gender activity, which in 2019, the Transgender Protection Act was passed. But even today, they lack basic civil rights. They do not have the right to get married. They do not have the rights to have a family. I was speaking to Ankita Mehra a few days back. Ankita Mehra is an out and proud lesbian. And she says, everybody has a dream. Everyone here, think about your childhood. Have you ever thought that as a child, what were your dreams? You would have dreams that, when I grow up, this is what I will become. This is what I will do. This is the kind of wedding I will have. Maybe I will have a wedding on the beach. This is the kind of wedding dress I will wear. I will have a huge, big, fat Punjabi wedding. Or I will have a small family wedding. This is the kind of designer lehenga I will wear. Or this is the kind of dress I will wear. Maybe I will have a small church, small court wedding, and then a huge reception. I don't know, but all of us have dreams. But for these people, whether they are LGBTQIA, their dreams are shattered. One of my clients that I was giving a session to, she said, from the age of 10, I had a dream that I will have a daughter and I will name her Meera. So when I had my daughter, I called her Meera. But these people don't have the right to even adopt children. But even then, many of them take in children who are orphans. They bring them up even though legally they can't. Abhina Aher herself took a child in who got orphaned because both his parents expired in a car accident. He's a heterosexual cis boy. By cisgender, I mean he's not a transgender, he's heterosexual, he's not lesbian or gay or bisexual. And he is now 22 years old man. He's working. He still calls her I or mother. The myth that people from the community will bring up children who will become from the community is wrong. As Abhina Aher says, love knows no gender. We carry a lot of myths about this community, about these people. And these myths can only be dispelled if we increase our awareness. And when we increase our awareness, then maybe some of our stereotypes and our biases can be eradicated and we can become more inclusive. So let's start with understanding some basics. And let me start sharing again. You know, the fact that we have clubbed them all under one umbrella, LGBTQ, but every letter means something different. LGB are sexualities, and T is gender, completely different. And for that, we need to understand what are genders and what is sexual orientation. When we talk of gender, the world has largely seen the world in binary. There is a man and there is a woman. But gender identity is how a person feels. A lot of these trans people feel that they are trapped in a wrong body. I was born as a woman, but I feel I should have been a man. It has nothing to do with sexual attraction. It has nothing to do with anything else, with love, with anything else. Gender identity is here. Do I feel that I am in the right body or the wrong body? And it's on a continuum. How comfortable I feel being a woman. Do I feel that I have to medically transition to be comfortable? Or can I just do cross-dressing to be comfortable? There are so many people, and that is why they are called the visibly invisible, who fear mockery, discrimination, who live inauthentic lives, that if I reveal to somebody that I was born a woman, but I would prefer to be a man, I will be mocked for it. Now that is gender identity and the dysphoria or gender incongruity that somebody lives with. But when I choose to express the gender identity that I believe that I'm comfortable with, it is gender expression. When I, as a woman, start to dress as a man, start to behave as a man, because that is the identity I believe or I am comfortable with, that is gender expression. I start to express my authentic identity. So there is a difference. I might identify as a certain gender, but I might not express it. The third is biological sex. I might be born as a female, I might be born as a male, or I might be born as what is called intersex, where I might have genitals which can be both male or female. That is chromosomal. So there is also intersex community. You might have heard that in many cases when a child is born, the child is abandoned at birth. Many of them are intersex children, and these are taken in, and that is called the Guru Chela Parampara, where there are communities of these transgender people where they take these children. Now, it has been wrongly communicated that this community kidnaps children, this community steals children. That is not the case. children who are abandoned, not accepted by the family for fear of societal mockery, are taken in by the community and given love, protection, shelter, food, care, medical attention. And that is the Guru Chela Parampara that this community has. It is not always babies, but sometimes even children who realize at the age of 5, 6, 7 that they might be in the wrong gender identity, or they want a different gender expression, or they might be lesbian or gay or bisexual, and they are not being accepted by the society. They are not being accepted by their own parents, or they are getting abused by their relatives, by their uncles and aunts, or they are being bullied in school, not just by their friends and peers, but even by educators and the authorities. They sometimes run away from home, or they are actually thrown out of homes, and they go into these shelters, into these communities where the Guru Chela Parampara takes care of these people. I was speaking to another person, and she told me that when she came out as a trans person, she was born as a boy. And when she revealed that she wanted to be a woman, her college in Bombay asked her to leave. Parents of other students created so much of a ruckus that the college asked her to leave. And when her parents got to know, they asked her to leave home as well. So she came to a shelter, and they said that, okay, we will take you in, but then you have to do, we all contribute. So she said, okay, I don't want to get into the flesh trade, so I will beg. And she went onto the streets and she begged, and she said, the first time somebody put a 25 paisa coin in my hand, I came back and I cried and I cried and I cried. And the elder in that house came and said, what happened? And she told him the whole story, that, this is how I have been let go of my college and from my college. So the next day, the entire household from that shelter went to her college, and they told the college that if you don't take this child back and you don't let this child complete her studies, we will come here every day and create a ruckus. So the college was forced to let her complete her studies. And that lady is today leading diversity, equity, and inclusion in a leading MNC. She has worked in national and international roles in the UN. She is extremely successful because the Hijra community supported her and helped her study. Then comes sexual orientation. So LGB, lesbian, gay, and bisexual are sexual orientation where there is no play of gender, where it is just sexual attraction. A woman being attracted to a woman is lesbian. A man being attracted to a man is gay. A bisexual is being attracted to both genders. But gender identity, being a transgender, being intersex, is where the gender comes into play. But we have bucketed them all in under one umbrella, but their issues are different. Okay. Out of 195 countries in the world, it is only 30 countries that recognize same-sex marriages. 81 countries have laws against discrimination in the workplace on the basis of sexual orientation. Even if you look at our prevention of sexual harassment, it is not gender neutral. 34 countries provide for some partnership recognition or for same-sex couples, and 69 countries have laws. Even today, they have active laws that criminalize homosexuality, like Nigeria. If you are known to be a member of the community, then you can actually be imprisoned for 10 years. Imagine, we all want to be our authentic selves. If I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, my hobbies, I want flexi timings. Smallest of things, if they are denied to us, we feel irritable. If I don't get food on time, I feel irritable. If I don't get adequate sleep at night, we feel irritable. Think about it. Somebody is being denied the right to be their authentic self all their life. Is it fair? Is it humane? I don't find it humane. Some of the safest countries, Sweden, Canada. I have a very interesting anecdote from Canada. In Canada, if you're a citizen of Canada, you can get married in Canada, irrespective of your sexual orientation, gender. There were two girls in Canada who wanted to get married, citizens of Canada, but from Indian origin. And they wanted to get married in traditional Indian style. So they went looking for a priest. All priests said no. Finally, they got a priest who agreed to get them married. He got them married, and in the law of the land, it was legal. Because they were Canadian citizens, it was legal for them to get married. You know what happened to the priest? All the other priests ostracized him for getting the two girls married. That is our level of inclusion. Which famous CEO has recently publicly come out as gay? Does anybody know? Tim Cook from Apple. He came out at the age of 58, becoming the first openly gay CEO of a Fortune 500 firm in the process. A very private person, he came out in an open letter. And he was motivated because they were receiving letters from children struggling with their sexual orientation. Even today in India, how many parents have the conversation with the children? In 2018, Section 377 was repealed. Before that, organizations were hiding behind the fact that it is not legal, we cannot talk about it, let's not hire. Things changed, but it's been 4 years since that change happened. How many companies are even now actively talking about, okay, let's go ahead, change our policies, look at our infrastructure, let's do something actively to work towards inclusion of LGBTQIA. Let's look, if we really want to make a difference, then we really need to understand. And it is not because it is our YouTube channel, but I would really humbly request you. We've done 4 interviews with 4 leaders from the community. We've spoken to Ankita Mehra, we've spoken to Celia Sandhya Daniels, we've spoken to Zainab Patel, we've spoken to Abhina Aher, and on 28th, I'm going to speak to Chris Falwell, who is the DNI head of Uber from Netherlands. They are all leaders from the community, and they are all talking about different challenges and how to overcome them. It is only when we understand the challenges that the community faces that we can come to solutioning. So I'm going to show you another video now, and then we'll take it forward.
Individuality. It's something we all have in common, but for some, the thing that makes them different, being gay, lesbian, bi, trans, or intersex, marks them out for abuse. According to surveys, between half and 2/3 of LGBT youth experience bullying in childhood, forcing 1 in 3 to skip or even drop out of school. Many LGBT adolescents are rejected by their parents and thrown out of the family home and end up living on the streets. Some 40% of homeless youth living on the streets of major US cities identify as LGBT or queer. Bullying, isolation, and rejection leave deep scars. Gay and lesbian youth are up to 4 times more likely to contemplate suicide compared with their straight peers, while young trans people are almost 10 times more likely to have attempted suicide than the general population. Workplace discrimination is widespread. In a recent European survey, 1 in 5 LGBT people reported experiencing discrimination at work in the past year. Studies suggest rates of joblessness, poverty, food insecurity, and depression are all higher among members of the LGBT community. For the individuals in question, these are personal tragedies. For the wider community, they represent an enormous waste of human potential, of talent, of creativity, and productivity that weighs heavily on society and on the economy. A study that looked at 39 countries found a clear link between the marginalization of a country's LGBT community and a corresponding loss of potential economic output. The cost of homophobia and transphobia is simply colossal. From a shrunken labor force and a flight of talent to lost productivity. According to a recent World Bank pilot study, discrimination against lesbian, gay, bi, and trans people could be costing an economy the size of India's up to $32 billion a year. The drag on growth filters into lower tax receipts for the government, meaning less money for health, education, and other essential services. No wonder the UN calls combating homophobia and transphobia both a human rights priority and a development imperative. This cycle can be broken. More and more countries and companies recognize the benefits that flow from tackling homophobia and transphobia. For companies, that might mean adopting new corporate policies to make the workplace safe, fair, and accepting for all LGBT people. And looking at their business practices up and down the supply chain for ways to reinforce anti-discrimination efforts. For countries, it means new laws and effective public education and training. The result? A world that is free and equal and more prosperous too.
Okay. So if we look at the continuum along their life, it starts with family rejection. When they first start to express themselves, even as early as childhood, the societal pressure is so great, the societal stigma is so great, the lack of awareness is so great, that family rejection rates are extremely high. And because family rejection rates are so high, that many of these children have poor chances of getting educated, poor chances of getting adequate healthcare, and they end up on the streets. Even if they continue, suppose they stay in the closet, they say they do not reveal themselves, something in their mannerisms, the way they behave, or the questions they ask because they are exploring about themselves makes them vulnerable to harassment and bullying. The incidence of sexual abuse in the LGBTQ community children by their near and dear ones is extremely high. Social exclusion and marginalization. Someone told me very interesting stuff, They said that they will, it is okay to maybe even have someone from the community as a co-worker, maybe as a peer in an educational institute, but maybe not as a friend, maybe not call them over for dinner. There is very high social exclusion and marginalization, and therefore the faith that the community has on the heterosexual community is very low. They are victims of hate crimes. When I spoke to Abhina and I spoke to Zainab also, they said that there is very high incidence of violence against the LGBTQ community. And when they go and complain to the police, the response is, I can't even say it in a public forum, the kind of responses they sometimes get. Then there are barriers to care. Barriers to care because in a lot of places, in hospitals, firstly, they lack the documentation. Sometimes when children run away from homes, they don't have the documentations, they don't have insurance, they don't have the money. So accessibility to healthcare becomes an issue. Hospitals and can also be sometimes discriminatory unless they are free clinics. Some of the other issues that they have. So, for example, Abhina was telling me that she wanted to take a loan. And despite all her accolades, the fact that she had worked for UN, she had worked for Global Fund, she had worked for so many global agencies, she has a proper full-time job, she gets a good salary every month, the bank refused her a loan. She had to take a loan from those, what are those called? The money lenders. And that loan is at a interest rate as high as 25%. So that is the bias that many institutions carry. And because of the hate crime, the abuse, the rejection, the psychological and mental distress that many of them, the baggage that many of them carry. And within the community also comes intersectionality. What if a person from the community has a disability? What about ethnic minorities? Right? So there are so many things within the LGBTQ also. Having sexual orientation versus being a transgender. Being a transgender is a minority within the LGBTQ community. Being a transgender is more discriminated against than being lesbian, gay, or bisexual. Some data. There is a lot of research which has proven that companies that are inclusive towards LGBTQ community, there is increase in innovation up to 45% as per Boston Consulting Group. In India itself, 1.57% of India's GDP is being lost out every year because of LGBTQ exclusion. As per Deloitte Australia, 6x more agility and innovation seen in companies with inclusive cultures. From 2002 to 2019, today, 83% of Fortune 500 companies include gender identity in non-discrimination policies. From this is in Australia. Not in Australia, sorry. From 1996 to 2019, For lesbian, gay, and bisexual employees, today 91% of Fortune 500 companies welcome lesbian, gay, and bisexual employees with inclusive policies that protect against discrimination based on sexual orientation. So what do people from the LGBTQ community really need? First of all, inclusion starts from the smallest unit of the community, which is family. Every child needs their childhood. And as families, and each one of us here has that influence. And if each family member, every parent, for a moment remembers that this child is my flesh and blood, how does it matter that their sexual orientation or their gender identity or their gender expression is non-binary? I mean, imagine your flesh and blood going on the streets and begging or at the mercy of somebody else. Just the thought will make one's flesh crawl. I think that is what these children need. They need support of schools. About 2-3 months back, a 14-year-old boy in a leading school in Greater Noida committed suicide because he was being bullied at school for being gay. His mother was a teacher in the same school. She had raised multiple complaints with the school authorities saying that my child is getting bullied, please look into it. The child left a suicide note saying that my mother, you are the best, but the school, the bullying, I cannot take it anymore. When the police investigated, school refused to take any accountability, saying that no, there was no bullying happening. Schools need to be held accountable. Teachers need to be sensitized. And lastly, we all need to be allies. And by allies, it doesn't mean attending sessions like this. It doesn't mean getting a speaker and doing fireside chats and panel discussions. It means getting actively involved. And I'm not saying this lightly. I have been personally moved by all the conversations I've done. With Tweet Foundation, I have pledged a part of profits from Marching Sheep, wherein we will be sponsoring students who are living in their shelters and getting, I told them we are a very small firm. So maybe we cannot sponsor 15 students, but even if 2 students we can sponsor and get them employment, then we are good. Right now, Tweet Foundation is saying that we have Super 15. Can we help them get employment? I know people in Concentrics, they are my clients. I know people in Nykaa, they are my clients. I know people in Vodafone, they are my clients. I am going to speak to them and say, can we place them? My husband, he's an active ally. Both of us have pledged our time. We are going to go every Friday, help these people with resume writing, polishing their interviewing skills so that they get placed. Sometimes allyship is not about money. Allyship is also about our time. We don't need to be a huge organization. Whether we are a small consultant, a homemaker, on a break, they need our time and support. They say that there are 5 to 10% people who are from the community. If we want laws to change, if we want them to get civil rights, can we join hands with them in the petition? Think about it. If people from the community are able to adopt, a child who is from the community gets parents who understands what is the gender expression, what is the confusion the child is going through. They will be able to answer that child's questions. The child will get a loving parent. The child will get a loving home. The child will get education. The child will be able to get medical attention if need be. The child will get protection, food, healthcare. The child will grow up and become something. The child will not need to beg. The child will not need to get into flesh trade. The economy will benefit, the society will benefit. So this was the individual levels that I was talking about. What can we do? As an organization, language is extremely important. The other day, how much time do we have? Do I need to keep quiet now, Peter?
We have a couple of more minutes, like Sonica, and then we can take up questions. Yeah.
Let me not tell you the story, but language is extremely important. Gender neutral language, pronouns. Sometimes we feel, why should I put my pronouns? Will people feel, am I part of the community? Actually, on the contrary, if I put my pronouns, then people across the globe realize that you are an ally and they can get in touch with you. So in your signature, on your LinkedIn profile, wherever you can, put your pronouns. And use, instead of ladies and gentlemen, girls, guys, use people, folks. Instead of maternity, paternity leave in your policy, put parental leave. Instead of, over lunch table or water cooler, instead of assuming that somebody will have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, talk about partners and spouse. Feel free to ask somebody, what pronouns do you use? How do I address you? In your forms, make sure that you have MX as a salutation, right? So it's very important. And remember, it is not sexual preference. People who are lesbian, gay, bisexual do not prefer. Their orientation is like that. That is how they are born. Team behaviors. I think it is very important to sensitize and build capability of your managers, of your employees. I think it is not a cost, it's an investment. And if it's not done in your organization, you should do it. Because 5 to 10% of the population is LGBTQ. If we feel that we do not have members of the community in our organization, we are wrong. They might be closeted, but they're there. And lastly, along the organizational life cycle, from onboarding to retirement, look at your policies, look at your practices. Are they gender neutral? And are they giving everybody an opportunity to grow, to be themselves? Or are we making barriers or invisible barriers in some way or the other? So with that, I think we are short of time. These were just examples of companies. You can make a note of these companies. These are readily available on Google. So that's it. With that, we come to an end. Thank you so much for listening in. If there are any questions, happy to answer.
So before we move into the Q&A session, we'll be initiating the poll. Request all the participants to kindly share feedback on our today's session. While you are doing so, request all our participants to kindly post your questions in the chat window regarding our today's session. So Sonica, we have a couple of questions that we have received, but now I would like to take them. Since many national figures have come out, is it easier for employees in the organization to come out? And if so, how do they come and express themselves?
So it is not easy for an employee in an organization to come out unless they feel psychologically safe in the organization. So the organization has to create, it has nothing to do with national figures, because national figures have a very different environment, they're very different privileges. A common person like you and me will have a very different environment, ecosystem, and reality. When I go to work every day, I will be meeting a set of people, my boss, my peers, my HR, my leadership. And are they going to be accepting? Are they going to be open about my orientation or gender identity or gender expression? Are people sensitized? Are the policies in my company? So, there are 3-4 things which are very important for an organization to put in place if we want people to start declaring themselves. Firstly, we need to know that we cannot force people to declare. It is voluntary. The second thing is that first, we need to put out saying that we encourage people to put their pronouns. Second, we need to have gender neutral infrastructure, washrooms. Third, we need to have medical policies, and that should include benefits for same gender partners. So if we are giving medical coverage to heterosexual people for their families and children, then for same gender partners as well. And for trans community, we should cover gender transition surgery, hormonal therapy, and in your EAPs, we have counselors. But for the LGBTQ community, where they have gone through gender incongruity or they have gone through abuse, there are specially trained counselors. So you should ask your EAP provider to have those counselors on board. And you should socialize that fact in your organization, that we have in our EAP, we have these counselors as well. Then people will start coming out or declaring or taking these benefits.
Thank you so much, Sonica, for the response. We have another question.
Yeah.
What is the biggest or most common misconception about trans people?
The biggest misconception about trans people is there are actually lots. One is that there are only trans men and trans women. But there are so many, some people are don't medically transition. There is social transitioning. So you will hear the term non-op and operated, medically transitioned. Then you will also hear several other terms. Then you will also hear that, oh, they are all from lower strata of the society, which is not true. Many trans are also from upper strata of the society. Then you you will hear that all of them, for example, one of them was that HIV/AIDS is an LGBTQ disease, which is not true again. So there are a lot of these myths. Then there was this one that transgenders steal and convert children into transgenders, which is also not true, right? So there are a lot of these myths about the trans community.
So
Then,
how can one support these LGBTQ people without their own sexual orientation becoming an issue?
sorry, I didn't get that question.
How can one support the LGBTQ community without their own sexual orientation becoming an issue?
Why should it become an issue at all? I think it should be a human to human support. So I am a cisgender woman, And when I am extending support to the Tweet Foundation, there is no question of what is my sexual orientation or what is my gender. I am simply using my skills, knowledge, and network to be of assistance. In fact, I offered my support to Abhina in full humility. And I said that, we don't have too much money. And I am not super skilled. I only know HR. So tell me, how can I be of assistance? She said, you give your time, you give your network, and we will use that. Hi, Abha.
So yeah, we have a question from Abha. What equality given to transgender yet? What equality given to transgender yet? So if you could just let us know.
So as of now, there is this transgenders bill. So what that allows is that if a person goes and self declares that I want to medically transition, then the district magistrate can approve that and they can go through the transitioning. It of course costs money. Now that is the only freedom as of now that they have. There is something under the Smile scheme that if you have your old Aadhaar card after you have medically transitioned, then your old Aadhaar card, PAN card, you can change all those your old class 10 certificate, all of that you can change, and whatever was your earlier identity, you can change to your new identity. So all of that can be done now, which was not possible earlier. So there is a concept called dead name. So if I was born as Sonica and I transition to a man and I choose another identity, then Sonica becomes my dead name. But for all practical purposes, because my documentation, my passport, my Aadhaar card, my PAN card has Sonica as my name, I have to live with my dead name for all my life. But now that has changed. With this Smile scheme, I don't have to live with my dead name forever. So there are these little changes which are coming in. But what is really, Abha, the issue is that it is not a level playing field. When we talk about the kind of opportunities that a cisgender heterosexual child has, because their family will not disown them, their family will not abandon them, their family will give them love, their family will send them to school, nobody will harass them, nobody will mock them, nobody will bully them. So they will grow, they will study, they will go to college, they will go to higher education. They will have a far easier life than somebody from the trans community. These people have hurdles at every stage. And that makes it almost like a hurdle race for them. So we need to try and remove those hurdles for them. As a community, as a society, how do I remove those hurdles? And for that, and that's why I'm saying each one of us can join hands and say that we don't need to be a part of a big organization. Can I become a small influencer to remove a hurdle? In my own colony, can I start educating parents that it doesn't matter? The child is mine. The child is ours, our flesh and blood. Let's not abandon. Let's not disown. So these are little things. That hurdle race needs to be converted into a equal opportunity race. I hope it's making sense.
Yeah, very informative. Thank you so much, Sonica. We have, I'll take this one last question. How should we respond to heterosexual friends or co-workers who feel negatively about person who is lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender in their office?
There is a personal question and there's a personal answer and there's a professional answer. You want a personal answer or a professional answer?
Let's have both.
So personally, let me first start with professionally. I think professionally, we need to call them out. Right? Professionally, we need to call them out and tell them that we are in the 21st century. We need to ask them to go and educate themselves on how the LGBTQ community has two eyes, 1 ear, 2 ears, one nose, one mouth, just like us. They are no different. And how people from the LGBTQ community are just as successful as us. And maybe tell them that they are better off than some of them in talent and skill and knowledge. So what's the big issue? So sometimes, negativity comes out of a place of lack of awareness or fear of how do I deal with them. It is not because somebody wants to be deliberately non-inclusive. It is because how they have been brought up, what they have been exposed to. It is almost like that child whose mother was transferring her own transphobia to the child. Right? Let us all accept the fact that till 2018 in India, being a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender was criminal. Wasn't it? If somebody came to our doorstep when a child was born, we would say, oh God, paise lene aa gaye. Isn't it? These are hard facts, hard truths. But the fact is, जब वो आते हैं तो प्यार से आते हैं, बधाइयां देने आते हैं. They come and give love, they come and give blessings. So I think making that person aware, getting into an argument, not giving up is important. Personally, sometimes just putting a person in a corner and asking that person that, what if your own child turns out to be like this? What will you do? And I've done it to a lot of my friends. And I've seen the blood drain from their face. In today's time and age, no parent will abandon. I know none of us will do that. We'll fight tooth and nail to protect our child. Grow up. When they, sometimes say, I said, okay, so you are okay with, there is also hypocrisy. I am okay about my colleague being from an LGBTQ community, but if somebody from my family, if my child or my brother is from the LGBTQ community, I'm not okay. That's hypocrisy. So you're a hypocrite. Sometimes using that hard language also pushes people in a corner. So you have to gauge when to, use what. Is it coming from a place of fear and lack of awareness? So a softer approach. Is it coming from a place of transphobia or homophobia? So maybe a more personal, direct approach. I use both. Are you all okay? I'm sorry. I am extremely passionate about this topic. It hurts me that human beings are suffering. I hope I have not offended anyone.
No, not at all, Sonica. And beautiful and an enlightening session on how one can be inclusive towards like to the entire community that we would talk as, and more and above all of this, it's how one can be human, because we are all out here, and that's where we can support, we can be besides them, help in ensuring that they are inclusive.
And
thank you. Yeah.
can I just say one last thing?
Yes. Yes.
So you would have noticed that I was quoting a lot of names, and I must give credit to those people because, as I said, I've learned a lot from those people. Zena Patel, Abhina Aher, Celia Daniels, Ankita Mehra. So I would humbly request that if you want to really learn more about how to be inclusive for the community, please go to the Marching Sheep YouTube channel, and you would find there are 4 interviews that I have done with these 4 people, and they talk at length about their lived realities, and you would learn far more um, than what I have spoken in this 1 hour. So you want to share the link of the YouTube channel, Vandana? Okay, just can I do that, Peter?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just doing it.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So thank you, Sonica, for creating this realization on how one can be so inclusive towards this community. It has been a pleasure being with you today, and I'm sure our participants have got the message on how can they be inclusive towards this community. Before we conclude with our today's session, we would also want to thank the association members, Asia, NASCOM COE, LinkedIn Local, Calgro, TLE, WICCI for supporting these HRI events. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the link provided in the chat window. Thank you once again, dear speaker, and our participants for joining us today. Do join us next week for our masterclass series, where we would be covering different aspects of diversity and inclusion this month of Pride from the 27th of June, 2022. I request you to kindly register for this event at the link mentioned in the chat window. Also to join the Dialogue 2022 WhatsApp chat group through the invite link shared in the chat window. That's it from us today. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Shyam. We can hereby conclude with our today's session.